Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. It's January and time for the 2019 craft room tour here at the Frugal Crafter Studios. I guess it's a corner of my basement, but it sounds fancy if I call it studios. And this is a collaboration with my friend Marta over Maremi SmallArt because we both had a mess on our hands after Christmas, after finishing up projects, and just stuff accumulates over the course of a year. So we thought we'd challenge each other to do a cleanup. Now, the thing that's really cool about this collaboration, I think, is that I have a dedicated space in the corner of my basement that nobody has to see except for me. Marta, on the other hand, is in a living space in her home, so other people will see her craft area. So it'll give you some good ideas on how to store your stuff, whether you have a tiny space or you have a larger space. So I want to show you Marta's before picture. This is a clip she sent to me. Take a look.
Hello, Lindsay. How are you today? Look at this messy studio. I'm telling you, we can bet mine is worse than yours. It looks so bad. After Christmas, after a month of creating Christmas projects, daily crafting, this place looks like if the bomb hit, if some kind of hurricane went through. Christmas stuff is already upstairs, yes, finally, so I have place to walk around, but it was so bad that I have no place. Like, all of this floor was filled with boxes with Christmas craft, with all the Christmas things to be done, or projects that I've already did. And look at this, it's so bad. I mean, it's just, I'm not sure when was the last time I had it so bad, but I'm showing you my honest truth, my really messy studio that I'm determined to tidy up and start today. I hope you will enjoy this creative time of tidy up with me, and yes, I cannot wait to see your messy studio.
Now, don't worry, I'm not going to throw Marta under the bus completely. Here's my before photos. As you can see, I had supplies piled everywhere. It was a mess. I had way more than I needed. I probably still do, to tell you the truth, but it was disorganized, and it just happens over the course of a busy season. The fall and winter is my busiest time, so I just tend to pile and shove, and then after a while you kind of forget that you have all this clutter. You get used to it. So I really needed to just kind of dive into my totes of yarn, my binders of stamps, my stacks of paper, and just get rid of the stuff I was unlikely to use. So now you've seen both of our before pictures. Make sure you check out Marta's room. At the end of this video, I'll have a link to it so you can go see. I'll also have it linked up in the video description. But first, have a look at my newly cleaned space. Let's first take a look at the bench that you normally see behind me in videos when I'm talking. We've got these are actually shoe cubbies, and in that I have these little red containers of beads. Now, they stack together and they lock together with a spindle in the middle, but I just put the spindles away in storage for now because it's just easier to grab one of these off the bin, like off the stack of bins. Then over here I have yarns in this cubby that I rescued from one of the girls' rooms. They didn't want it anymore, and I sorted what I kept for yarn by color, and I put the novelty yarn on top because I would be more likely to use that for card making and bookmarks and tags and things like that. The bench that you see there is actually a hollow core Luan door that I took off the closets many years ago when we first bought the house because they always came off their rails, but I use that for a workspace. I also use that as my main table, a different one of those. And I've got some shallow drawers underneath where I keep stuff like watercolor paints, watercolor crayons, templates, and things like that. Try to find drawers that remove if you're going to use them. Like if I can take this one all the way over to my desk and I can take out the colors that I need. They're so much more useful than the ones that stay fixed in place. I also have my space heater stored under there because it's chilly down here in this unheated basement. It's only about 57 degrees today, and it gets down to about 50, honestly, in the winter. So I gotta make sure my area is workable when I do need to work down here in the winter. Now let's take a look at my stamp storage. I have binders that I keep my stamps in. Now this was chock-a-block full, and it went through every single binder. I took out every single stamp set or individual stamp, and I really evaluated whether or not they spark joy, and I got rid of about 2 big boxes of stamps. So I'm going to let my friends go through them, and what's left will be donated to charity. I've had many people ask me what my stamp binders look like. So they're just a regular old binder from like the office supply store. And what I do here is I use either divided page protectors or even full-size page protectors, and I put my stamp sets in there. It works out really well, and I can flip through it kind of like flipping through a catalog, so I don't have to do any other inventorying of my stamp. I can just grab the theme, like this is my vintage and this is my sewing themed and fashion themed binder. I get really specific if I have a lot of stamps of a certain type, because that way I can find what I want, and then I just store my stamps there. You can also use these panels like this, but you want to make sure that your stamps are really sticky if you're using them, otherwise they could fall off. And then just try to keep really specific labels on them so you know what you have. Like this one I have sewing. I have other ones that are storybook, other things that are ABCs, 1, 2, 3s. Just make sure you're specific so you can find what you need. On this bottom shelf, I have a couple totes of specialty paper like vellums and mulberry paper, and then I have my library travel teaching kit for watercolors, and I have my old Kenmore sewing machine that I use for crafts like quilting or making rice bags or other small cloth crafts. This right here is my big wall of wood-mounted stamps, and honestly, part of the reason I really like this is because I enjoy looking at it. I do reach for stamps there first, usually, because they're just so convenient, already being on a wood block, but I also look at the stamps as kind of mini little works of art, and I do enjoy looking at them and creating with them. So even though it takes up a lot of wall space, and a lot of people might think it's inefficient, I really enjoy having it, so it sparks joy, as KonMari would say, and I keep it. And over here, you've probably seen this canvas hanging thing before with most of my acrylic paint and oil paints. Those are my heavy viscosity tubes. I will generally grab from there first. I've had them for a while, so I'm trying to use them up, and I do like the Liquitex brand because they last a long time. So it's just really easy to see what I have, grab what I need, and create. And then I have this storage, which was an old calendar display that I had my husband poke nails through from the back, and that holds my wheel stamps, which I should use more because I really do enjoy them. And this just rack there that's got a sarong on it is actually for paper. I have oversized pads of paper as well as full sheets of pastel paper that are about 19 by 25. They fit in there. My larger sheets of watercolor paper live underneath the bed in my bedroom because I have a nice large flat file that slides under my bed for those, and that way I'm in a humidity and temperature controlled area for those. I'm not so concerned with these lesser expensive pads and pastel papers, but my watercolor paper, with it being more expensive, I'm pretty picky about. And next to that is a tower of different paints that I have that I also use for different crafts and mediums and whatnot. These are simply inexpensive drawers. You can get them into any office supply store. They usually go on sale around back to school time, and it's just really convenient because I can see what I have, and I can do that because I'm in a basement. It doesn't have to look pretty, but it works really well, and it's really easy to access all of my things. And then I've got overstock oil paints, kids liquid watercolor, craft paint for like furniture refinishing, like my chalk paints and whatnot, and it's all just really easy to get to. Turning around and looking underneath the desk, there's the garden mat that I stand on when I'm filming, and you can see shallow drawers. Those have ink pads in them. I have my peg stamps on top of that, then my trash can, then in a little bookshelf, it's all my watercolor palettes. Next to that in the bookshelf are all my liquid inks and liquid watercolors, and above that are my full-size ink pads and also some water containers and spray bottles. Next is a filing cabinet, and in the filing cabinet I have magazines that I've been published in, mementos that I've saved, and different things like that. And then in these containers I have brads and embellishments and different things like that in these little plastic containers with magnets glued on the back. And I got the containers free from my brother-in-law who worked at the mill. I really pride convenience in my studio, and I want to make things easy to use. So I always have a area set up for photographs. So I have a light up there that shines down on a piece of white foam core that's got a piece of white paper taped to it, so I've got a place for photography. Since I blog and create video tutorials almost daily, I wanted to have that ready to go, so I do dedicate a space for that. Even though maybe it may seem inefficient to use space just for display, I find it's very useful to have. Next to this is my Harbor Freight spinning tool thing, and I keep my most used supplies there, the things I'm always grabbing for, like my blending brushes and my glues and my spray bottle of water. It used to be on my table, the table the tripod is sitting on right now, but I found that I really like to have my table clear. I'm a big fan of the KonMari method, and in her book Spark Joy, she talks about making your kitchen, making your workspaces easy to clean, not easy to access everything. So your countertops, like my kitchen countertops, I keep them clean so that I always have room to work. It makes cooking less of a chore, and it also makes crafting less of a chore when you have your workspace completely cleared off. And your other stuff can still be accessible, but not on your table. At least that's my belief. I've certainly had stuff on my table before, but I find that it really just kind of makes me feel, does not spark joy to have crap on my table, I'll tell you that. And next to that, I have my markers, and this would be on my table, and then I move it off my table. I love being able to just reach over and grab the marker that I wanted, because then I use them more. But I find having them right behind me, because I typically stand right here when I film. I've got a thing that comes down, a stick that comes down from the ceiling that holds my camera, and I film right here. So just reaching back like that to grab my markers is not a big deal. So I have my alcohol markers here and my water-based markers here, and these are the brands I typically use. I do have others like up in my office, and I'll show you photos of that at the end of the video, because I do work up there when it's really cold and if I don't need a lot of supplies out, and I can work in a small space. But anytime I have a larger project, stamping or whatnot, I usually work down here. I have my water-based markers here, and then I keep my most used watercolor brushes in this little cup right here, because I know I am going to need them. I like to have little dishes to organize the supplies that I'm working in. So if I'm making a card, I'll have like die cuts or blending brushes or stamps or something. I'll have a bunch of these little containers with my stuff in them, and it really makes it a lot more convenient to use and easier to put everything away. And then my table looks a little nicer when I'm filming, which is something I'm working on, trying to make it look a little better for you guys, instead of the big hot mess that it usually is if I'm not filming. Let's be honest here. Now next to that, I have a set of cubbies where I have just random stuff. A lot of my pencil sets are in their tins, and I just bring the tin over and open it up and go right from there. I don't keep my pencils out all the time downstairs. I do upstairs, but it's just, I like to keep my desks clean, so that's what I do. In the bottom cubby to the right, I have my pan pastel palettes and also my jelly plates. Next to that, I have powders, mica powders, watercolor powders, twinkling H2Os, that sort of stuff. And above the pan pastels, I have smaller sketchbooks and just smaller watercolor papers. And then I've just got, you know, ribbons and foils and just stuff that I don't really have a better space for, that I need a large open area. Now, if I tip you down here, you can see my paper storage. Now, you'll see that I have quite a few empty slots there. That's because I got rid of probably half of my paper, and I have got 2 big milk crates full of paper that I'm giving away, but that is always well received from local schools. It's good stuff. It's beautiful paper. It was kind of hard to part with, but when I looked at the paper that I still have, which, I mean, these are page protectors, but I mean, this is all paper. That's more than I'll probably use in a couple of years. So I figured that was more than adequate. And then I made very specific labels on each of these shelves, just so I know what's there, so I don't have to guess, because I moved everything around. I actually pulled papers out of pads, so I would just keep the stuff that I really wanted. And I've got some specialty cardstocks, metallics, and whatnot in the upper left-hand cubby there. I moved my baskets. It used to be sitting on top of my stamp binders that have current projects in them over here because they fit. And I've just got a lot of empty slots there, and I think that's great. Now, there are some drawers under there. They have a mishmash of supplies. There is an empty one or two, but basically when I destashed a bunch of ribbon, when I KonMari'd this place, I put the stuff that I use like in this row. I've got some bead making equipment, I've got some random tools, different things there. I do keep a couple kind of junk drawers where I have like mixed media stuff, but I might actually weed through them a little bit. And in the corner, I have the stuff I don't use very often. I apologize if it's really dark. I keep trims like laces and bird cages, because it's really easy just to pull out what I want. I have some teaching supplies in the plastic tubs over there and the crates, and you know, it's larger pads of watercolor paper, or 9 by 12 I would say, pads of watercolor and pastel paper on the next to the bottom row. And then I've just got some kind of utility bins, those pink ones underneath there, for stuff that's kind of big and bulky that I use all the time but aren't pretty, so I just tuck it under there. I can easily access it, but I don't need to get to it all the time. I find that the little modular wire cube sets that you can get at like Target are really handy for making paper storage or any other kind of bulky storage or storage for things that need kind of a specific size. I have my resin crafting things there, some watercolor crayons, just some random stuff, really. I know where it is. I can see it. It's organized. It works for me. Underneath there is a reclaimed sandpaper display with all my beige and white and craft cardstocks that I use for card bases. And that's sitting on top of a vintage record album cabinet that has my colored cardstock in it. And here you can see my cardstock that's organized by color. I've got 12 by 12 and 8.5 by 11 here. I still do have some larger cardstock pads, like these stacks here that are in my my cubbies right behind here. But as I start to use up cardstock here, I just start tearing out the pages from my cardstock stacks and put them in here. Although I typically mostly use 8.5 by 11, and I don't even use colored cardstock that often. One thing that helped me organize and get my cardstock under control and more usable was taking Jennifer McGuire's tip for using job ticket holders for your cardstock. I put just like similar colors together because I don't have like 25 sheets of one single color. That would be more than I would ever use. But it helps keep the papers from getting the corners bent, keeps them in really good condition, and then it's so easy. Like if I know I need some orange or some blue for a project, I just grab the packages of colors that I need and take them to my table. This tower of plastic carts is just framing supplies, nothing very fancy. We don't really need to see that. It's packaging and framing. Over here though, this is kind of a fun area. This is my die cutting area. Now I do have my large background stamps up there in shoe boxes. I like it because I can flip through them. They're all on their ends and I can flip through them and find the background I need. I've got some mixed media stuff on the top shelf as well as some wire for wire working and jewelry making. I have some overflow jewelry stuff over here because I couldn't keep it all over in the other area, which kind of bugs me because I know I should have like with like, but it just wasn't working out. These two things right there are die cutters, and then I just pull them down onto my workspace here whenever I want to use them. It works out really well, and then I have all my die cutting tools together. So all I have to do is move my cutter and my scoring board, and it will fit right there and have plenty of room to move. Underneath here, I have larger stuff that really doesn't have another home. I have some shadow boxes, some wooden easels, some like tabletop easels, a little overstock with beads, my laminator, my stamp maker, and this is kind of a cool thing. Right here, I've got my light tablet. I made a little runner, kind of like I just hot glued a couple strips of wood, and I made myself a little holder for my light tablet. And again, I would put that on top where my die cutter is for when I want to use it, and it works great. Everything stays plugged in, and I shut it all off with a power strip, so it's convenient to use, so I actually use it. I left that space on that shelf empty because my pastel drawers go there, but they're upstairs because I'm working on a pastel class currently. I also have embellishments and odds and ends in those little hardware bins behind there on that the bench. Behind that cloth is just matting boards and old portfolios that I wanted to just kind of keep out of the way and keep the dust off of. My easel is there, and I've got a little stool, and I have my Stampin' Up! DVD case stamps back there. And that purple advent calendar is buttons, and I've got some stained glass remnants for bead making back there, and my sprays, because those are things I don't need to get to very often. I have this little reclaimed chest of drawers here. On top are my different brushes divided by mediums. I have the most watercolor brushes, so I have them divided by size. And that little shelf there I found on the side of the road one day. And I have some like button displays. My YouTube play button is there. And then I have canvases way up top because they're really light. And then there's just a random bin of, it's not random, it's full of alphabet stamps. But, but there you go. Now, one of the reasons I wanted to clean up is because I got this folding table for Christmas. I wanted it for a craft fair display because my craft fair table was so heavy, and now I can actually open this up in front of my big table and I can have friends over to craft, which is something I really wanted. Okay, I try to use any space I don't need for storage, anything I don't need for like work area as storage. And so this was another reclaimed piece of furniture. I use it for my fabrics, and I have my fabrics folded up and on end so I can see all of my patterns. They're mostly fat quarters because I do craft sewing down here. Any garment sewing or like home decor would be done upstairs on my main machine. But this is like the smattering of things I need. It's all sewing stuff. It's not all pretty, but it's all confined to that area, which is great. Here I have 3 drawers of different embellishments and brads and eyelets and things like that. And then I have drawers of glitter and flocking, and also a drawer of embossing powder. Whoops, it's a little full. And then in this drawer of embossing powder, I also keep this really great resource. It's from Fran Seaford, the owner of Stampendous. It's Embossing Powder Techniques, and I cannot recommend this book highly enough. It's got so many really good techniques that will help you use your hoard of embossing powder, which is something that I've got a problem collecting because it's so pretty and fun to use. And the last thing I want to show you here, because I think this is a really good idea, this is Christmas stuff. So the only time I'm going to be using this stuff is around Christmas time. And I found that I had some stuff that I'm like, oh, one night I was about ready to get rid of these like little twinkly numbers. So I was thinking, well, I haven't used them. I've had them for a couple of years. They survived the first KonMari purge, but I really like them. And I felt really bad because I felt like I really shouldn't keep them. But then I realized I stored them wrong. These were not stored with my Christmas stuff, and yet I'm only going to use these for a Christmas layout or a Christmas project. So I put them with my Christmas stuff. Little tiny decorations or odds and ends, I keep them all there. So I know when I'm doing Christmas decorations, I'm doing Christmas projects, I grab that drawer right out and I take it to my table. Now these drawers do come with lids that lock. So if you have little kids, I would highly recommend keeping the lids on. But if you don't, I take the lids off because it's easier to access everything. This top crate I have scrap paper in, and it's divided by color. So I have both the solids and patterns by color in hanging file folders in the crate, and I always go here first before I cut a new piece of cardstock. And underneath, in other crates like this, I have leftover school supplies and also canvas panels. So the kids know exactly where to go if they need more tape or pencils or index cards or what have you. Now I want to talk about the table itself. This was again another hollow core Luan door that I took off a closet, and I painted it white, but the thing is, I couldn't keep it white. So the other day I actually spatter painted it, and then I used a brayer to brayer everything out, and it's got a beautiful kind of matte texture because of the brayer. And now if I drop any more paint on it, you won't even notice. I have a Arteza cutting mat over there because actually the Arteza ones are a lot less expensive than the ones at the sewing store, and I wanted something that was a mid-gray for recording reasons. So I have a nice neutral background for when I'm filming like a card making tutorial that's not messy, so it won't be distracting. Now I'm really pleased with the size of this desk. It's about 6 feet long and about almost 3 feet wide because the cubes that I use for the legs are 3 feet wide. So I got these cubes at Target a couple years ago and put them together, and these make up both of the legs. This is 36 by 36 standing height. So if you sit, you'd want to get like a bar stool height chair for that. But I stand while I'm working because it keeps my space around the table clear, and I'm always getting up to get something, so it doesn't make sense for me to sit. And then I just use different bins, fabric bins. You can find these around $2.50 at Target at back to school time. And I have like clay molds. And I'll use whatever I have. I don't have to have everything matching because I'm not in like a main living space where other people have to see it. So like I'll put origami paper and small paper pads in here. And I do have some kind of junk drawers that I need to go through because I'm a saver. I save corks and bottle caps and little boxes that soda comes in, different things like that. And after a while it gets to be a bit much and you have to go through it and weed it down. But some stuff I always use that I keep are decorative edge scissors. I have a pail of decorative edge scissors in here because I use them all the time even though they're not in style anymore. So it's great to have these bins for your bulkier things that are kind of hard to store that you don't really want to look at, but you still want. For stuff that's really heavy like punches, my husband made me a couple drawers to fit out of plywood, and I have these on the bottom because they're heavy and they just slide in and out right here, and it works great. So just make sure that whatever you're using for storage is adequate because these would not hold up very well for anything heavy. They would just fall apart and it would just be wasted money. And I can't really get into this to film this end of the cubbies, but it's the same idea. I have things like cleaning products, glues, stencils, stuff like that, that I still want to have quick access to, but are less pretty than the one that you see when you're coming in, but still stuff I want to get to. I almost forgot to show you this chest of drawers. This is a nice sturdy chest, and the drawers go in and out really well. On top I have brayers and handles for my stamps and, you know, blenders, just odds and ends that I do use a lot but don't really have a a really good category to put them in. And then I have 2 drawers of temporary. So what I mean by that is kind of stuff that I'm waiting to do a video on, but I'm not sure if I'm going to keep, or stuff that I'm waiting to put into permanent storage, but the storage, I need to use up some of the stuff in my regular storage. So, and like tie-dyeing kits, that's temporary products because that's stuff I'm going to use up in a project, so it doesn't need to have a permanent home. I do have my silk screen products in the bottom drawer there, and also my larger jewelry boards that don't fit with the other stuff, and that is a permanent storage area there. I try to make sure there's a little room left in every drawer so that I don't feel like I don't have to pull out everything to get what I want. And there you have it, my craft room tour 2019. I hope you've noticed some differences from the before picture to now. I'm really happy with the way it feels down here. Sometimes your area can look completely organized, but it just doesn't feel good to be creating in it. You feel oppressed. And oftentimes, it's not getting something new that makes you feel better about your space and your creativity. It's getting rid of the stuff that's getting in the way of you creating. Getting rid of the products that are in the way of the good stuff, like getting rid of the balls of worsted weight acrylic yarn that's in the way of this gorgeous eyelash yarn. You got to get rid of the stuff that you're not going to use. I know it's hard because everything has potential for us crafters, but you won't regret it. You really won't. I clearly still have plenty. This would probably be very anxiety inducing for some people because it's so much, but I do run a home-based business, and I do pull from this variety of products a lot, and it's much more efficient for me to have a good stock of things on hand rather than having to run to town, which is an hour trip really. So it works for me. Everybody's different, and make sure you go check out Marta's craft room redo. I think she'll give you a lot of good ideas, especially if you are a paper crafter, a mixed media artist working in a smaller space as part of your regular living area. So there's lots of ideas you can pull from both of our videos, and please do. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments below, or if you have different struggles with your craft room organization. Leave it below. I'm sure other folks watching the video would help out too, since we all have unique situations for our craft supplies. I want to thank you so much for watching, and oh, before we go, I'm going to show you some photos of my upstairs working area. In the winter, I work at a drafting table in my office when it's too cold to be downstairs, and I try to keep some things on hand, such as colored pencils and a little spice rack on a little stand to my right. I keep things I'm working on for current projects on bookshelves and on a little shelf in front of my desk, and it works for me. I can't keep everything up there, obviously, but it's really nice to have a heated space that I can work. So that's it. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, happy crafting.